Assalamu alaikum everyone. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. So this is actually my first time speaking to a Muslim audience, so please bear with me. Usually I speak to in peace festivals and with the work we do at Zainab Rights, but I'm truly honored to be here with all of you. Thank you, Ali, for inviting me. I'm not at all great, as he says I am, not at all. And I'm so thankful that my husband and my children agreed to join me. Usually they don't come, he's too nervous to watch my speeches. So believe it or not, he's making me very comfortable. Just seeing my kids there makes me very comfortable. So I've been here for a couple days in California now, so it's been an amazing time. I'm so jealous of everyone here who lives here and has amazing weather. For me personally, weather really affects my mood, so I'm really excited to be here and thankful. So today the topic is an interesting one. I've never really talked about it publicly, and I was surprised when he asked me, because this is something that is a personal struggle for me as well. And I'm sure that as I talk about my journey and my story, many of you might find similarities, maybe some differences, and maybe some of you will find these stories applicable to your own lives. So there's been ups and downs in this journey, just like anything else. I'm by no means perfect, and I'm trying to do my level best to balance these rights of the family, rights I have to myself, rights I have towards our Lord, and then the rights we have to the world and to the oppressed people of the world. So, before I begin, I want this to be very casual, and I want this to be interactive. So if any of you have any questions or comments or opinions, which I love debating and critical thinking. So please stop me, raise your hand if you disagree with me. Sometimes I know we forget questions till the end. So if you want to stop me, I won't lose my train of thought. I have my notes. So growing up, I had always had a passion for writing. Although now with Zainab Rights, it's easy to see that, this is something that I've always been born for. It's not always been that way. Throughout my life, I've been very much attracted to storytelling, to writing, to art. And that's something that's always attracted me. History has attracted me. And throughout my journey as a teenager in school, I did start a community magazine called Al Kamal. It was an out-of-the-garage magazine that I would write by hand, and then we would go to Kinko's and I'd publish it in black and white paper. And I just was very interested in telling the stories of our community in Orlando. And everyone would laugh at me and they'd be like, why are you so interested in telling the stories of everyday people? And that's just something that I would get a kick out of, something that I would love to do. And going throughout, college, I graduated from Homeland Security and Political Science, just because I really was interested in understanding the world around me. I grew up in a climate, I'm not sure about any of you here in America, but I grew up in a post 9/11 climate. I'd moved here at 9 years old, and just a few months later, 9/11 happened. So for me, largely a huge understanding of my world was shaped by how everyone was viewing and demonizing Islam. And for me, the religion was very much different when I'd go at home. And so it was a continuous struggle of trying to understand the politics and how all of this was shaped by the world that I was viewing as a young girl. So during this journey, after graduating from college, I got interested in writing children's books. This is something that I was having my first baby, and I thought that I could dedicate time and effort towards from home. And once that happened, I published a book. It took a span of 2 years from start to finish. And I was just really content with the way things were going. I really enjoyed the work I was doing. But deep down inside, I knew that this wasn't my calling. Because I, as a individual, I know that something is wrong when a person is too comfortable. You know, today I was just telling my husband, we went to La Jolla Beach, and just my days here in California, people seem very, happy with the weather, with the lifestyle. I would really say that this is like the closest to happiness, the worldly kind of happiness you would see and in all my travels, and I've traveled quite a bit. And to understand that, what do you do after that? After you reach that happiness, the worldly happiness, you have the perfect weather, people are pretty, well off. I mean, in terms of you don't see that much poverty as you see around the world. And just to understand that, where was this? Where do I, as a person, am I supposed to be comfortable? Am I supposed to be this way? Is this what my life is supposed to reduce itself to? Am I just comfortable with a roof over my head, with my children, with my responsibilities as a wife and a mother? And the answer was no. I knew that I had to do something that was more difficult, something that would require me to challenge myself and try to achieve things that no one else has done before. And I think that as a Muslim, as a Shia Muslim especially, the beauty of our faith is in the struggle in this journey that we need to acquire perfection, closeness to Allah. And that's when I felt like my calling was to go back to graduate school. So I applied to Harvard University and got into the field of international security and journalism. And all credit goes to the person who sits over there, my husband, and this is where I guess I will go more in depth into. I don't know if you guys are married or looking into getting married, but basically my journey is a very haphazard one. This is not at all what I expected my life to be. In fact, growing up, I felt like I would never get married. I was very much into career, professionalism, the kind of life that's promoted here as a career woman. And I was like, marriage is very overrated, especially people in our culture, in our faith, are highly patriarchal. They won't let, women do anything. And so I was very turned off from the idea of marriage from the very beginning. And it took him over 1 year to convince me. Him and his parents came to propose to my family 3 times. And, like they say, 3rd time's a charm. And we finally said yes, because he convinced me. And although this could have been dangerous, because he could have falsely promised me, but he convinced me that, marriage, like I was viewing it, it was like the death of me. It would be the end of me. And he convinced me that that's actually when your life would start. And just consulting with our faith and just figure out that, in fact, in Islam, it's very recommended, to get married, even to get married early. But this comes with nuances. So finding a partner, marriage in today's day and age, you see many types of different marriages. You see marriages that are in different extremes, where there's a very traditional setting, and we come from an Indian culture. So in the Indian culture, many women are the stay-at-home moms, and the men bring the bread. And that's it. That's what the woman's role is, and nothing else. And if you go outside of that, you're seen as kind of rebelling against that tradition or that religion. And then you have the other extreme where both parties are, career people in the professional world, earning. And even like now, we had a couple of conversations with people who said that here in California, or basically in general in America, both wife and husband need to be, or both partners need to be working so that they can make ends meet or even afford their housing. And so this got me into thinking that what kind of lives and what kind of lifestyles are we leading in terms of our rights and our role to our family, but on the other hand, balancing that with our passions, with something that is important, not just for us to leave our legacy, but for us to achieve our perfection and what God wants us to do and achieve our full purpose in this life. So, in the Quran, in Surah Nisa, verse 1, it says, "O people, fear your Lord who created you from a single soul and created therefore its mate, and from then spread many men and women. And fear Allah in whose name you appeal to one another. And fear Him, particularly respecting the ties of relationship to one another. Verily, Allah watches over you." I wanted to bring up this verse because I think it's very pertinent to the whole symbiotic relationship where both men and women are equally mentioned in the Quran. And God specifies that both men and women come from a single soul. So in today's landscape of feminism, we have understood feminism and women's empowerment as something very Western. However, feminism in its actual reality is a very Islamic concept. It's very much outlined in our faith that women have as many equal rights as men do. But equal rights doesn't mean sameness. It doesn't mean that both are the exact same, because obviously both men and women have different strengths and different weaknesses. And now, many people might argue that nowadays women are equally or physically even stronger than men. You see many women in fitness and, very, very strong, muscular women. And so I'm not talking about the physical strengths and the physical weaknesses. We're talking about the spiritual realms that both men and women have and the different capacities that are required for them to achieve their perfection. So, therefore, Islam does very much so define the roles of women and men beautifully by taking their biological differences and similarities into consideration. So personally for me, the work, stay-at-home aspect was the hardest decision after I had my children. And this continues to be so. And today, personally for me, I've had many job offers after having my children, after doing the things that I do. And some of them are very tempting. If both of my husband and I bring home an income, we could live more lavishly, we could travel better, we could do the things that we can't do now. And there's two things that made me really think about this decision. One was when I was growing up, I grew up in Africa, East Africa, and the people very much like here are very, happy-go-lucky, content people. And I visited a very poor village in Zanzibar. And basically everyone there is illiterate, very poor people who live in the village, and it's very difficult to make ends meet over there. And so we noticed that a family was walking along the beach. And so I asked my aunt, she's the one who runs Tamani Villa's school, in Zanzibar. She started up a school for the children of the village. And I asked her, do you know these people? And she said, you want to know something interesting, Zainab? These people had the choice, so they work for the school. The father works for her, he's one of her employees. And she said that I actually asked him if he wants to get paid overtime and if he'd like to stay after and work more hours. And what he said to me, I'll never forget. He said to me that, at 5 o'clock every day, we take a walk on the beach with my family. My children, my wife, all of us take a walk together on the beach. And I don't want to impose on that time, the time that I have with my family. I don't want to earn more money. What will I do with more money? I have what I need, my children have what they need, but right now what they need is their father to spend time with them. And this story stuck with me. I was only 14 when I heard this story, and for that story has been a huge inspiration to me on why I chose to be a stay-at-home mom. The other one, obviously, is my own mother. My father passed away when I was 6 months old, and my mom was a refugee from Pakistan to Africa with me, her baby. And at that time, we were extremely poor, dirt poor, and we struggled to make ends meet, like she tells me. I don't remember too much, but she always recounts those stories, and ultimately she had to end up working as a teacher in a nearby school. So my grandparents had to help pitch in and take care of me. And at that time, this was the way she would bring the bread home as a single mom. But then when she remarried when I was 5 years old to a man who accepted and loved me, she decided to stay at home because it wasn't necessary for her to work anymore. And growing up under that shadow, having my mother at home with me, really affected the way I viewed things, the way that she spent time with us, and I wanted to do the same for my children. Trust me, this was a very, very hard decision. Just ask my husband. And I had many job offers coming through. I didn't even need to go to school for that to happen. But it was the worldly success, it was the worldly money, versus the time that I would have with my children. And the third point was that I'd also look back. Again, whenever there's some kind of confusion in my life, I try to gain inspiration from our role models, the Ahlul Bayt. And I wanted to see what kind of life was it that they lived, and was it applicable to our times? Because everyone, all my friends were like, Zainab, why would you be a stay-at-home mom? There are daycares. Daycares are very popular nowadays. And I gained inspiration from Lady Fatima, somebody who is all of our role model. And it's very clearly defined that a woman's perfection lies in the home. And many people don't like when I say that, but it's true, and we cannot change that just because the times are different. It's important that we know and understand our values, that if our perfection lies in the home and the man's perfection lies outside of the home, this doesn't mean that those roles cannot help one another. And that's where I want to kind of get into, is that does not mean that the husband does not help at home, or that the wife cannot do anything else except for being at home with her husband and her children. In fact, I think that the most recommended thing, even before marriage and afterwards, is to continue to work, to seek education, and to further your own knowledge. And this doesn't just bring respect between both parties, and that elevates the respect that the husband and the children have for the women, but in fact it brings in harmony. I'm a very alpha female, my husband likes to call me, very strong-headed, stubborn person. And what I've realized is that to have a successful and happy married life, there's a lot of sacrifices. And this strikes a chord with a lot of people because, you know, in this society that we live in today, I grew up in America. And it's a very individualistic, hey, you know, it's my way or the highway type of lifestyle. But what do you see that's resulting in the landscape that we live in today? There's children born out of wedlock, there's divorce rates that are plummeting, they're skyrocketing. And there's children who are born into different types of families and intertwined, and there's no stability. And this is why I want to bring back what Ali mentioned earlier, is that the responsibilities that we have as husband, as wife, as mom, as dad, these are very important to fulfill because, in fact, they help shape what is going to happen with us in the future. So on that note, you know, once I realized, just on the side, I do help couples with counseling and things like that. And what I have noticed is that when these things are not situated, when there's turmoil within marriages, within relationships, within mother and father and children and husband and wife, we cannot think of anything else. It's like the pyramid of self-actualization. If you don't have those, you know, the priorities, the needs met, then you can never really get to where you need to get to. You know, that's why it's so important for us to help alleviate hunger, to help alleviate poverty, because a lot of the roots that, you know, that people who are joining the ranks of all these devious and, you know, evil people are because they're rooted in socioeconomic problems. Someone who I just read about, a Sudanese mercenary who joined the ranks of ISIS because he didn't have, the only choice for him was either to join something evil like that or to let his family starve to death. And so at that point, he wasn't even thinking about right or wrong. And I've seen this reality firsthand, the poverty that comes. And in the same way, when there's turmoil within families, I like to think of it as poverty in the household. And you cannot think of something that you can achieve in the long term. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was, and I see young people there, is that everyone here is a gold mine of talent. That's what my dad used to tell me. Growing up, I actually was a failure in school. I was in elementary school, I was getting into fights. I was known as the dumb kid who was sent to summer school and ESOL classes. And the teachers told my parents that we have no hope for her. She doesn't want to learn. I don't think she's capable of learning. So they, in a way, kind of had put me into a box. My parents had kind of given up on me, and they didn't think that I could achieve anything. And one day, just something switched in my brain, and I said, I don't want to be called a dumb kid anymore. I don't want to live this kind of life. I want to see where my capabilities take me to. And just by working really, really hard, trust me, it wasn't easy. Maybe you know, some people are gifted and they're born with certain talents. I was not born with intelligence. I don't think that there's such a thing. Maybe with Einstein. But I wasn't born with intelligence. I had to teach myself. I had to spend my lunches in the library learning, reading English, furthering my education. And slowly I started bringing my grades back up. It was a slow process. Once I graduated high school, then I got, you know, I had to put myself through university because my parents said, we can't afford to send you to college. And so again, it was that willpower and the hardship that I faced that helped me get there. So a lot of times, you know, many of us don't know what we're doing with life. We don't know where we're going to end up. And that's okay. You know, understanding your passion doesn't mean that it's gonna come to you in one certain day. Maybe, you know, what Zainab writes, maybe this is the end, maybe this is what we're supposed to be doing, maybe it's not. But we have to understand that life is a lifelong process, and we are all work in progress. We all are trying to attain our perfection. And the key to understanding is that this is not a race. It's not that I'm successful and you're not, or you're successful and I'm not. The point of life is to bring each other up together. And the same mentality works for the family system. We need to bring each other together. We need to heighten each other. You know, if it wasn't for my husband or my family, I wouldn't be doing the work I'm doing. I'm actually a pretty lazy person. And it helped. He was the one who would push me and say, you know, don't be lazy. Don't do that. You know, you can do this, or this is how you need to think of your ideas. So when a partner or a spouse does that for the other person and helps them thrive, I think, and you know, I don't do that. I have to work on myself as a wife. But I do give credit to him, and that we need to continue to push each other. And that is what I look at a marriage as. You know, it's not about who wears the pants and who does this, and it's not about, you know, looking out for myself. A lot of us get married because, you know, it secures us. It helps us have a companion. It helps us do that. But in fact, a marriage should be grounded on the love between you and your husband, but most of all in Allah. So if we have that goal, and it took me a while to understand it, we've been married for 8 years, but I realized that if the end goal is Allah and you both are kind of looking in that direction, it doesn't matter if you're the North and South poles, or you're the most opposite people in the world. When you have the same direction, you're going to help each other thrive to get there. And so there's no marriage that's not compatible. When you have God in the picture, there's no marriage that's not. And lastly, the last point that I want to make, and I told you this would be short and sweet, but something that I've personally faced is, and throughout my journey with Zainab Rights, with going to school, with balancing my family. Go ahead.
Could you explain what Zainab Rights is?
Oh, you guys don't know what Zainab Rights is? Oh, I'm hurt. No, so Zainab Rights is actually a independent media outlet. We call it our media community that promotes justice and peace in the world. So what we do is we try to give a voice to the voiceless, the people who are oppressed around the world. We create animated videos that try to eliminate stereotypes and misconceptions, which we have so many of. And we basically try to promote holistic understanding of what's happening in the news. A lot of people have different fragments and different things, and it's basically we want to heighten human conscientiousness, kind of like think 10 times before you do something. So a lot of us have called us the annoying group, people who kind of are, you know, there. The next thing we're actually doing is releasing a list, a boycott list for Israeli goods. And we've been working on this since last year. We've been working with a lot of partner organizations, but a lot of what we do is those kind of things that, you know, people don't necessarily like, but somebody has to do it. So, no?
So we're online in the Zainab Rights.
Yeah, so we are basically everywhere. We're on Instagram, Facebook, but we do have our own website, ZainabRights.com. And the name is in honor of Lady Zainab. I call her the hero of storytelling. I think she's the one who furthered the revolution of Imam Hussein and the idea of truth and justice. And I think that, you know, we hope that even though Zainab Rights is not a Muslim organization, it has many different faiths and cultures. I do see as a personal, as someone who started Zainab Rights, for me, It was an idea to bring people together, to unite us under the banner of justice and universal justice and truth. I think a lot of us have those concepts. Maybe ours are different. Mine personally is rooted in a more God-centric concept of justice. And some people might take offense to that, people who aren't God-centric. But I think that there's a lot more in common that we have with each other than we don't. And I think that it's time today, especially, to recognize those similarities and, and critically think about those differences as well. I don't think that we should be brushing anything under the rug, which a lot of our communities do. We're very myopic and very afraid to discuss things. But I think that that's where we need more debate and discussion about the differences and the different viewpoints. So one struggle that I do deal with on a daily basis is validation. And that's something I want to bring up for any of you who are looking into and interested, in the field of activism or starting something of your own. I do want to bring up a story before I get into that point. And it's the story of Siana. Who knows who Siana is? Siana was Lady Siana. Anyone? You'll get like an extra credit point. Anyone know who Lady Siana was? So Siana is I've named my daughter after her. I've named the book I wrote after her as well. And I find this woman to be the most inspirational person in this world, after Lady Zainab and Lady Fatima, of course. But Lady Siana lived in the time of Pharaoh, the tyrant. And she was a hairdresser. A hairdresser, just like my mom's a hairdresser, someone who works in the salon. And she dropped her comb while she was styling someone's hair. And she called on God as she picked it up. And so the person sitting there, told her, "What are you doing? Why are you calling on God when the true God is Pharaoh?" And so she boldly said, "I don't care who Pharaoh is. My God is God, Allah, the Lord of the worlds." And for that, and she was asked to take that statement back many times, and she did it. So Pharaoh threw her into the fire, and threw her young child into the fire as well, and she was also expecting. And for me, that is the epitome of true strength. So it's not about what you do, it's about how you do it, and it's about how you carry that forward. The people who are said to come back with our 12th Imam, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, is our regular people. The first one who will join his ranks is the butcher. So it's not about, a lot of us, and me especially, were guilty of this complex called everyone should be like me complex. This is actually real. This is like saying that everyone should see the world like I do. Everyone should be like me. And there was a time when I dealt with this. I would struggle that why don't people do what I do? Why aren't people out there, actively protesting, actively doing the things that I'm trying to achieve? But we have to realize that every one of us is different. A daily interaction with the best of akhlaq out there in the world can make a monumental difference. Just a couple months ago, my husband and I were pulling out of a parking garage in Disney Springs. And just from previous experience, my kids have spilled milkshake all over the car, and it smells horrendously. I hope you guys never experience that, because it's very difficult to even get off of the car. So we had a milkshake in one of the child's hands, and I said, I'm not putting that in the car with them. And if I hold it or my husband holds it, they will cry the whole way home. So in a spur of a moment second, I had this mommy decision where I just took the cup out of my child's hand and I placed it on the ground, on the parking garage. And I just walked into my car, I basically just littered. I walked into my car and my husband was walking in and somebody honked behind us. And my husband got out and went to talk to him. And he said, "Sir, I know you're Muslim, and I know Muslims don't litter. And I just saw your wife who wears a hijab litter. So is you guys not following your faith or something?" And I felt so embarrassed, and this was just a couple months ago. I felt so embarrassed, and I realized how monumental our actions are. Our daily interactions, our interactions with our neighbors, our interactions at school. If we're not living our religion, then what are we really doing? We have to live our religion. We don't need to be out there shouting. And this is something I personally took to myself to do, is that, task yourself and understand every day, at the end of the day, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Am I doing it for the followers? This is a struggle we have. We release something, we get many followers. We release something that goes against the mainstream view, we lose half the followers. And, we're like, okay, so are we trying to please people, or are we trying to please Allah? And that's something we need to task ourselves with, that whatever you do, whether you're a hairdresser like Lady Siana was, whether you're, someone who plays sports, or someone who does this, no job is not, too important or too mundane. Everything has a meaning, and every one of you and every one of us has a talent that we need to find and we need to pursue to the best of our ability. And one thing that I wanted to end with was the school that I go to. Harvard has on its entrance of the faculty library, again, a verse of Surah Nisa, which says that, "O you who believe," so, verse 135, says, "O you who believe, stand out firmly for justice, as witnesses to Allah, even as against yourselves or your parents or your kin, and whether it be against the rich or the poor, for Allah can best protect both. Follow not the lusts of your hearts, lest ye swerve, and if you distort justice or decline to do justice, verily Allah is well acquainted with all that you do." So my brothers and sisters, we live in a world where there is a lot of blurring of truth and falsehood. There is oppression abound everywhere around us. So as a mom and a wife, in my own home, I felt like I could dedicate my time, that the extra time I have when the children go to sleep, or the time when my husband comes home in the evening and can help me with the children, that's when I can work on Zainab Writes. For you guys, it can be anything. But we must do everything in our power to live up to our religion and practice it the best way we know how. I just came from a Hosa, from Life Seminar in Chicago. And the thing that I took away from the Nahjul Balagha, that's what we studied, was that we all know that not gaining knowledge and not learning and practically being a vegetable takes us away from Allah. But so does not applying the knowledge that we know. So that's very, very important. And I will end with the last thing, which is YOLO. A lot of us say YOLO, you only live once. But the truth is we only die once. We only have one life to live, and we must live it well. So thank you so much for listening to me. I hope that I did not, forgive me for any of my shortcomings. And if anyone has any questions or comments, please ask away.
So I was going to say, if any of the brothers have any questions, to ask them now, and then she can move back into a sister's discussion. I think that would be more relevant. So do any of the brothers have any questions?
So you mentioned people were pushing the idea of going to doing daycares and things like that, but you chose to be involved in your own kids' life. So what do you think is the difference between raising kids and just maintaining them? Like just the difference between just giving them their necessities and actually educating them, preparing them for yourself rather than through others.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So for those who, if you didn't hear him, he said that what's the difference between raising a child and maintaining a child? Um, and you know, I have a lot of friends who do send their children to daycare, and they're wonderful parents, and their children are wonderful as well. So don't get me wrong. This is not to judge people who send their children or who have to send their children. My mom had the same situation when she could not afford and she needed to work. However, it's important to know the psyche of the child and the fitra of the child, which is that children are like sponges. You know, just the other day, my youngest, you know, during the month of Ramadan, all the young children would gather around them, and they ended up teaching them, you know, a lot of the periodic table. I didn't even know that happened. They came home and they started reciting it. And that just goes to show you that the children pick up so much. And a lot of us today, we blame the environment around us. We blame, you know, what's happening. And a lot of us is beyond our control. We need to live here. We're Americans. But of course, a lot of what we experience in the world outside of our own is not comparable to our values and our traditions and our beliefs. So I believe that the only way to really maintain that, a lot of the influence comes from your home. You know, your daily interactions between husband and wife, the way you treat your children, and what you're teaching them. I do homeschool my children as well. We call it our Salam Academy. And you know, there's so much joy to teach children and to learn from them. So being a stay-at-home mom by itself is a lot of work. You know, even, you know, I try to get him to stay one day and I find him on the floor by the end of the day. So it's a lot of work. Women do so many things. First of all, we're not even supposed to be, like, this is not something we have to do, cooking, cleaning. But so many women do it out of love for their family. And on top of that, raising children is not easy. But at the end of the day, you know, nothing good in life is easy. And once these children will be older, I personally don't want to take the chance knowing that I didn't do everything I could to try to put them on the right path. And for me, obviously, to learn myself as well to put them on the right path. So going back to that question, it's to see our role models, Lady Fatima and Imam Ali, and how they lived their lives. And Baby Fatima also did the things outside of home when she had to stand up for oppression, when her lands were taken away, fadak. And that does not reduce a woman to just being a mom. And she's a teacher, she's a nurse, she can achieve so much. And that also transfers to the children. So we have to definitely, both husband and wife, father and mom, need to be an active part of our children's upbringing. And our children also need to know that they need to respect us and know that we also have capabilities outside of just raising children. You know, we are also constantly self-improving ourselves, gaining knowledge. You know, once I want my children to look up and say, hey, you know, my mother is learning as well, and she is getting a degree, and you know, she could be doing this, but she gives us time. It's just instilling respect in the children and to know that you can achieve so much if you wanted to. It's just, I think for me personally, it's that family is the most important priority, because a family is what builds communities, what builds the world. So if we place enough importance in our children, in the upbringing of our communities, that's what will really resonate for the rest of the world. So we need to constantly be that change with the way we are with our family and maintain that balance and our responsibility in other faculties of our life. Not just be extreme in one, but be a balanced, holistic individual.
Thank you so much for coming and talking about your experience. Do you think that, especially I found that your comment about feminism in the West, there's so many women that think that to be a feminist means to reject faith or to reject God, or specifically even Islam. How do you see the have more equality, but it's not been expressed in all of the societies that are also necessary.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, so one thing that I wanted to mention in terms of the struggles that I face on a daily basis with the validation is that, some people will judge you. And for me, a lot of people do. They say that you are backwards because you're a stay-at-home mom. But then there are people, especially close family members, close community members, that will come up to you and say, what are you doing, Zainab? Why are you doing Zainab right? You should be spending time with your family, your children. Why are you going to school? And close family members and close community members, that's where it hurts the most. That's when you're like, oh, don't they know my life? I'm trying my best. I'm trying to do this and that. But I don't think that they mean to. And I just think that they have not seen life like we have. They have a different kind of life, and they can't imagine that someone is striving to kind of balance all realms. So I think that first of all, what's important is that, once again, be the change you want to see. I don't think that you will be able to change the way people view everything, or you're gonna die trying. If you can, that's amazing. But I think that what's important is that to not, respect people, but do not seek validation from them. If our young people want to do some kind of work, today a lot of youth face hindrance just because they're trying to get validation from their elders or community members. And it's those closest to us who doubt our capabilities. They try to inhibit us. So don't try to seek validation. Have the sincerest of intentions and go and do it. No idea. The only shot missed is the one that's not taken. So we have to go out and try, and we have to be that change that we want to see. We can't expect everyone will change overnight. But if we, all of us here, this is a great community, and I can see, the vibrance and the dynamics, and I think that it's not at all as cultural as other communities that I've seen. And it just starts slowly. If we empower our women, if our husbands empower the wives to say that, hey, you want to do something, I'll help you. If our wives empower our husbands and say, look, what you're doing is amazing, what can I do to help you? It has to be a team effort. Families need to help their children grow, and vice versa. And I think that the idea of feminism, the true kind of feminism, I don't like putting labels in our faith. A lot of people are putting labels: liberals, conservatives. These are all just labels. For me personally, Islam has an answer for everything, and we just need to look at that. I mean, Islam came in a time where baby girls were being buried alive. So in fact, it came in a time that was so regressive, paganistic, backwards. And we have so many rights, so many things that empower us to be the best we can be. So I don't think that we should get bogged down by these labels. A lot of us want to try to fit in, and hey, I'm feminist too. So we have to be careful to understand the true kind of feminism that comes with our faith, and not get bogged down by these labels and these devious ways of Western concepts of feminism.
I have a quick question. Do you think your husband can also give us a lecture and maybe help us others?
I think he should have been the one giving a lecture, not me.
Because it seems like you have a good relationship, and it'd be good to also learn from the brother's perspective. And, I appreciate everything you've taught.
Thank you. The honor was mine, honestly. And if you guys have something that I can learn from, at the end of the day, it's about helping each other grow. So if you have any comments for me afterwards, I would be very willing. If you have any ideas for my children, homeschooling, I'm up for that as well. Are we good?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
So there are some Muslim activists, women activists, hijabi activists who have maybe compromised and sold out on many things. How do you find inspiration from Athlete to stay as principled as you have been?
Yeah, so for me personally, means do not justify the ends. There was one time I recall that was so tempting. So we currently, Zainab writes, and I'm not embarrassed to say this, but we work out of my garage. Hence, people think that I'm in some fancy studio, but I just converted my garage into this makeshift studio so that when the children are asleep or they've gone out with their father, I can do the things I can from home. It's funny how, media can really make you think otherwise, but it's really just from our garage. But there was one time when we were approached by someone in our community who said to us, Zainab, I'll invest in your company. That it's a non-profit, it's a student organization, but I'll invest in it, thousands of dollars. And you can get your own studio, you can, do whatever you need to do. We are constantly in need of money. Media world is very, very expensive, and not many people appreciate the value or understand the power of it. And and he said that I'll invest in it, but do things this way and do things that way. And don't report on all these things, all these politics, and just try to make our community look good. I said, Zainab Rights was never made for you to look good or your community. That dilutes, that doesn't just dilute, it takes us away from the entire path. And there have been many such instances where these things come and go. And at the end of the day, it's very, very difficult. Even today, when we don't get views on certain videos or we lose followers, we're like, okay, maybe I need to change this, maybe I need to win the crowd, how these different organizations are using sound bites to get people, and they don't really even know what's really happening. But it's these bite-sized videos, they think they know everything. And I remember that when we started Zainab Rights, we didn't want our organization to be like that. And now, I'm actually contemplating those things. So, I think it's very important to understand that this world, this life is full of temptations. It's full of deviances, and if you just slip, it might be very difficult to come back. So, in a nutshell, success in this world does not mean success in the next world. If you deviate, you might never find yourself again. We never did this for fame. We never did this for followers. If we have value in our work, and you know that you have value in what you do, maybe inshallah people will come. Maybe they won't. But it's important to not deviate from those intentions. It's very, very important.